Hey everybody, welcome back to our second video in a 5-part series, the 5 pillars of front squatting. Back here again with Kaylin. So in this video we're going to cover a really important aspect of the front squat, which kind of differs a little bit from a back squat in breathing and bracing. What's super important about the front squat when in bracing is that your bar is sitting on your chest. So it's really difficult to pick the bar up out of the rack, step back, and then regain any structure you didn't get in the initial unracking of the bar. It's kind of critical point before you unrack the weight to be super tense. Everything is braced, everything is stacked up the way you want it, then to put the weight on your chest and unrack it. Any failure to do that is going to cause problems later on in the squat. So once we've established our grip, like we did in the last video, we know how wide we're going to grab the bar. We know if our hands are going to be wrapped around or not, our fingers are going to be wrapped around. We also know where the bar is going to sit behind our delt. The next thing is actually getting under the bar. And before we actually pick the weight up, maybe even before we roll our hands under the bar, Kaylin's going to take a big breath down into her stomach, all the way down here. Breathe out into her abs and around in a circumferential pattern around her whole torso. So she's going to want to think about both pushing her obliques out and pushing out on the back, on her back here before she gets under the bar. So the biggest breath she can get down into her belly, brace, place the bar where it belongs, then stand up from the rack. She's got this set. She's going to take 2 steps back, setting her feet where they belong, taking another breath, a small breath without breathing out again. She's going to breathe in forcefully, tense up, and that's where she'd begin her squat. The next thing that's super important, when Kaylin braces, she wants to make sure she has a neutral spine. Before we do any kind of front squatting, because the front squat involves your legs so much, you're going to maintain a really upright torso. So any kind of hyperextension of the spine, or even like a hyperflexion of the spine, is going to put your hips in the wrong position. If you're too hyperextended, if her hips are way back and her back is arched, she's going to end up sitting back a little bit too much. That's going to tip her torso over and the bar could just fall off her chest, or at the very least, just create a problem standing up. She's going to have collapsing in upper back and something we don't want. So neutral spine. Once she braces, she's going to make sure her hips and pelvis are drawn under her and she's in a neutral position before she starts any kind of squat. Neutral spine here. This is a really good position. She's completely upright. Her hips, her shoulder, her knee, everything's in a really nice line here. What we don't want to have happen is that Kaylin hyperextends her back. So she pushes her hips back and her back is really hyperextended. Not in a safe place. It's really just a bad position to start from. This is a little bit exaggerated, but really try to avoid this hyperextension here. So the other position that we don't want to get into is where the lifter is maybe a little bit too relaxed here. The bar is a little bit low and she's not bracing properly. Maybe her hips are even curled under a little bit too much. So curl forward, right? Where she's unable to stand completely erect and she's putting too much of the pressure on the front side of her body. She's not actually neutral here. This is just a really unsafe position for her back. It's also just going to be a really bad position to generate any power from her legs because everything throughout her whole upper body is kind of soft and squishy. So ideally, locking the leg, keeping the torso completely neutral. That's what we're looking for. So in conclusion, we went over 3 points today. The first being how to breathe and brace. Make sure that when you draw the air in, you pull all the air in and get as tight and tense as you can, breathing circumferentially around your body before you pick the weight up out of the rack. That's going to ensure success later on in the lift. Point number 2, make sure that you stand with a neutral spine, okay? We want to make sure that everything is upright, your hips are under the bar so you can descend properly. And then the third, avoid any kind of hyperextension or flexion in the spine where your hips are sitting too far back and your back is supporting the load in an awkward way, or with your knees unlocked and your hips sitting too far forward under you. Thanks for watching our second video in our series, The 5 Pillars of Front Squat. If you guys liked it, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube page and stay tuned for the other 3 parts in our series.